from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on Ag Day.
I'm Michelle Rook. The Trump administration has turned up the heat on regulatory reform, and it'll start right here at USDA.
In agribusiness, prepping for the trading week ahead.
You know, we've changed the calendar. We're now moving into June.
Yes, we are.
The spring's past us, summer's upon us, and I tell you what, Northern Illinois, it's like we flipped the switch.
Machinery Pete is looking into the distant future for auction prices, and it's Beast Feast in Tennessee. This wild dinner is helping raise money for a good cause.
Ag Day, brought to you by the dependable, longest-lasting Chevy Silverado.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. For the last several years, farmers have cited the increasing number of regulations as one of the biggest challenges facing their businesses. However, a new administration appears to be trying to change that. Michelle Rook looks at what farm groups in the administration are targeting for reform and how fast regulations can be unwound.
While President Trump has already used executive order to roll back some of the regulations costly to agriculture, more reform is on the way, and it may start right here at USDA. Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue is chairing an interagency task force charged with resetting the regulatory tone in agriculture.
We're going to do that through facts-based decision-making, good science, common sense regulations. We're not just talking about the Wild West free range kind of do anything.
The head of EPA says he's also trying to change the agenda at his agency, from pesticides to climate change.
Getting back to the importance of regulating, providing certainty to those in the marketplace, but doing so where we're not putting the thumb on the scales in favor of certain folks.
And EPA is already working on reform, including biofuels regulations.
It's the RVO targets that are set each year in November. Routinely, the EPA has missed those targets. That's going to change.
The agency is also analyzing if Pruitt can grant a waiver to allow year-round E15 sales.
I very much hope that we can get there. It's just a matter of whether the statute permits it or not.
Plus, EPA trimmed the backlog of pesticide registrations from 1,000 down to 500.
I made it a priority coming in that we needed to get that backlog cleaned out and then make sure that we have certain timelines to get certainty out in the marketplace.
However, farm groups have a whole host of additional regulations they want reformed.
Whether it's regulations at OSHA, whether it's EPA stuff, whether it's transportation stuff, there's a long list.
The top of our list would still be waters of the U.S. I mean, we have got to get that thing completely overturned, see if we can get it moving and get the courts to rule one way or another soon.
The GIPSA rules released as the Obama administration left office are a top priority for livestock groups.
It would open up the floodgates to really costly litigation that would target packers.
The packers have made it very clear if they're going to get a threat of litigation every time they pay for one pen of cattle versus another, they're going to go back to commodity pricing.
However, even with all the agencies working on reform, it may take time to unravel some of the rules.
Things that have been in place for a long time, they'll have to go through a rulemaking or even statutory changes to get the kind of fix that we need to have done.
In Washington, I'm Michelle Rook reporting for Ag Day.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Now, the interagency task force that Perdue chairs will be applying a standard of science-based analysis to every regulation to determine which ones are actually creating economic activity in rural America versus which ones are holding back economic activity. The results will be reported in 180 days. Meanwhile, Secretary Perdue also weighing in on President Trump's decision to pull the United States from the Paris Climate Accord. Quoting now, he has rightly determined that the Paris Accord was not in the best interest of the United States. Perdue goes on to say the Earth's climate has been changing since the planet was formed. The Ag Secretary says USDA remains committed to digging ever deeper into research to develop better methods of agriculture production in that changing climate. Much of the world reacting much differently to the president's announcement. The Paris Climate Pact, involving 192 nations and includes voluntary emission reduction goals. The United Nations says it remains confident that all of the parties to the Paris Agreement will continue to demonstrate vision and leadership to reduce emissions, even without the United States.
The decision by the United States to withdraw from the Paris Agreement on climate change is a major disappointment for global efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and promote international security.
But many in coal country are applauding the move. Coal industry workers, including those who've been laid off, say the president's decision could give a boost to that struggling industry.
I don't think anybody is against clean air, clean water, clean land. We all want that, but what is the evidence? What is the price, economically abandoning the resources we have.
You got China over there building coal-powered plants left and right, so why would we, what sense of us being in it?
Others say that America cannot subsidize or help the rest of the world and has to focus on its own citizens first. Now to the courts. The U.S. Supreme Court denying a petition by Missouri to hear a case against California and 6 other states. Led by Missouri, the state sought to overturn a 2008 California law setting requirements for housing egg-laying hens. Compliance costs were estimated to cost between $25 and $30 per hen at that time. The ruling reaffirms the 2016 Circuit Court of Appeals decision against the case. The parent company of JBS will pay $3.2 billion in a settlement with Brazil over bribery and corruption charges. Meat industry publication Meeting Place reporting the fine will be paid over 25 years and is the largest ever in a leniency agreement worldwide. The leniency agreement addresses the involvement of the company in a bribery and corruption scheme with Brazilian politicians revealed by company executives in a plea bargain deal back in April. Mike Hoffman joining us now on a Monday morning to look at crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. Let's start off in Tolna, North Dakota. Darren Schmidt says this picture explains plant 2017. Even though the U.S. Drought Monitor says the whole state is abnormally dry with 24% in a moderate drought, Schmidt says his area got 37 inches of rain last season and above average snowfall this year, which made the area pretty wet. A viewer in Richland County, Louisiana, writing on AgWeb, says soybeans and cotton are in the ground for the operation. Last year, 4,700 acres on his farm was buried under 1 to 12 feet of water. He hopes this year is better. And taking a look at the jet stream, you can still see the strange weather pattern with a cutoff in the northeast. Do we get out of it this week? I'll have a look at that along with my forecast, but first here are some hometown temps.
With market prices constantly changing, it's important to know where current prices stand. Get market prices delivered right to your mobile phone. Just text MARKETS8 to 31313 to get started.
When we come back, it's our weekly roundtable discussion with a focus on the marketing week ahead. And later, Machinery Pete.
Stick around, folks. Coming up, we're going to talk harvesters, very new ones and very old ones.
I'm Charles Denny. Got a taste for raccoon or squirrel? How about venison heart? It's part of Beast Feast on the University of Tennessee Ag Campus. That story coming up on AgDay.
AgDay is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest lasting pickups.
In agribusiness last week, we saw big moves in cattle markets. Let's see how things ended from our friends in Chicago.
Hi, grain markets generally trading higher today with soybeans leading the way. Soybeans at one time 12 cents higher have given some of that rally back. Corn and wheat also trading higher on the day. We are starting to hear about wheat yields in the Great Plains, and the yield reports have been kind of disappointing to go along with some reports of some low test weights. So real problem with the wheat, especially the Great Plains hard red winter wheat, and we could see that market really start to take off. Cattle futures sharply higher, and hogs trading both sides of unchanged in Friday trading. Cattle market reacting to reports of very strong prices being paid in the cash market, the auction market fully underway, and some reports of 134 to 135 being paid in the country here for live cattle. Thanks very much. This is Jack Scoville. I'm Vice President of Price Futures Group here on CME Group floor with some comments for the markets today.
Jim McCormick with Allendale and John Payne with Daniels Ag Marketing, our guest here today. Let's talk about how do we get ready for this week ahead. And Jim, we'll start with you. As you sit down on a Monday morning, what are you thinking?
What I'm thinking coming in Monday morning is, we've changed the calendar. We're now moving into June.
Yes, we are.
The spring's past us, summer's upon us, and I tell you what, Northern Illinois, it's like we flipped a switch. It went from a cool, wet spring, and we've got some beautiful weather this weekend in the 80s, and the question I've got right now is the trade going to kind of get past this, hey, we're not getting the crop planted, to, hey, what if we do turn dry? We've put a lot of grain in the ground under less than ideal conditions. Sure. And I think the trade is set up for a rally. And I think, we're going to be seeing if the funds flip the calendar, do they start out lightening this massive short position they have on?
Yeah, and I think we've seen agronomically, if you put a crop into a wet field and then it gets dry, boy, those trenches can open back up and you can have a problem. John, what are you watching this week?
I'm going to be watching the livestock market. I think that's really where the cards are flying right now. We had June just go off the board on the heavy contract, essentially trading near contract highs. This is the second time we've done this. April was the same, and now it'll be August sitting at about $10 to $15 inverted. I'd like to say there's a paradise of risk out there. You know, you can make a really good decision up here that looks great 6 months from now, or you can make a decision that really hurts the pocketbook 3 or 4 weeks from now. Be very careful. I still think there's some upside here. I think those feeder contracts are bid for a reason. You know, demand is there. It's a little bit of a different type of market than we've seen in the last couple of years, where supply has been driving things with the big droughts. This is demand, Chinese demand. India's not in the market anymore. We have these cash prices that are all of a sudden popping. So it's completely swapped from where we were 6 months ago.
Jim, as you look at fundamentals in the grain markets, and what strikes you? I mean, obviously Brazil, South America, there's a big crop down there.
Yeah, what strikes me the biggest thing is the farmer producer has optimism to rally, but you got to take a reality check. The world has had a phenomenal run of good luck as a nation, as countries producing crop. We're pretty much oversupplied, and that's the reality check. Is that's going to keep rallies in check. The Brazilian, Argentina corn crop combined is like 1.6 billion bushels, bigger than it was a year ago. That's a lot of competition.
Absolutely.
That we got to face.
All right, well, there's a lot to face as we start a new month and get ready for summer. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. We'll be back with more Ag Day in just a minute.
To talk to Jim McCormick one-on-one, contact Allendale Incorporated at 815-578-6166 or email Jim at jmccormick@allendale-inc.com. To follow John Payne's take on the market, check out www.thisweekingrain.com.
Welcome back to AgDay. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, as we start another week, we're trying to see if there's any change to the pattern here.
And I think there is. I think at least for this week, we are going to see drier conditions across most of the country. Whether that trend continues or not, that's the big question. As you can see, still have that cutoff as we head through the early parts of this week in the northeast, keeping it on the cool side, and that kind of extends down into the southern plains and the southeast as well, keeping temperatures a little bit lower than normal. Now, here's where things have changed over the past couple of days. Earlier last week, we saw this cutoff right there diving into the Great Lakes by later this week. That's no longer showing up on the computer models. So as we head through the middle of the week, that's showing it way up in Canada. Still the cutoff a little bit along the East Coast. And then by the end of the week, it's more of a ridge building across a good chunk of the country with just some weakness along the East Coast and a big cutoff trying to come into the West Coast. And that's the way it looks as we head through the weekend and into next week with a huge ridge coming into much of the middle of the country. That will begin to dry things out. So temperatures this week, I'm going below normal from eastern Texas all the way through most of the southeast and up and down the eastern seaboard. Now, a lot of this is going to be earlier in the week, and it will gradually become closer to normal later in the week. Above normal, though, from Minnesota back through Montana, eastern Washington, all the way southward into the Four Corner region and northwestern portions of Mexico. Precipitation this week, I'm going below normal for a huge chunk of the country, including the entire Corn Belt, all the way down through the southern plains, especially north and west Texas, into much of the Intermountain region, above normal for the northeast, southeast, and the Gulf Coast regions. Let's go through the 90-day outlook month by month. There's my forecast for June temperatures. I'm still going to keep a pocket of below normal through the middle Mississippi Valley, Ohio and Tennessee valleys back into the central plains, above normal out west. We'll shrink that below normal area down to just a small area there, kind of where the Ohio Valley and the Mississippi Valley converge for July. Above normal then developing in the northeast, South Florida, and western third, if not half of the country. As we head into August then, I'm taking that below normal area out, going near normal for most of the Corn Belt, above normal then for the central and southern portions of the Rockies, the southeast, eastern seaboard, and eastern Canada. Precipitation, and this is always tough, over a 90-day period. You can get some heavy thunderstorms that just kind of blow the normals out of the water, but you'll notice I'm going above normal for a good chunk of the middle of the country, right down through the Mississippi Valley, near normal in the east and near normal for most of the mountains and the west coast. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. First of all, for Butte, Montana, a mix of sunshine and clouds, high temperature of 69 degrees. Greenville, Mississippi, I should say, humid with a thunderstorm in some areas, high of 87. And Annapolis, Maryland, a shower or thunderstorm around, afternoon high of 81.
New equipment's hitting the market, but what will its used value be when your children or grandchildren are looking to buy one at auction? Machinery Pete has some thoughts, and he's next. And later, some interesting critters are being served up in Tennessee for a good cause, of course. That story on In the Country. As new equipment makes its way to our market, our own Machinery Pete pulls out the crystal ball, looking ahead to auction prices in the distant future. Greg?
Well, 27 and a half years now covering the used farm machinery market. One thing that always gets me, folks, contrasts. And probably no better example than I've ever seen of this was last week, end of last week. So Thursday in Moline, John Deere unveiled their new S700 series combines with their new headers. And here's a picture of the new S780 combine. We posted a video of this on the release day. You can watch that on our machinerypete.com website. Now later that same day, last Thursday, I posted another video. And here's a picture of what we featured. It was a Farmall C with a 14M one-row mounted picker that sold on a farm auction in northeast Missouri. Amazingly intense bidding action on this thing. It sold for $8,500. And I think back also to May 20th, when we saw this combine, an International 91 with an 8-foot header, sell for $5,250 on an auction in southeast Pennsylvania. Now when I see these old harvesters sell, what it makes me wonder is what will that S780 sell for 50, 60 years from now, and who will buy it? Now I'm 51 years old, 50 years from now I'll be 101. I hope I'm around to find out.
All right, thanks, Greg. If that didn't whet your appetite, maybe this will. Beast Feast in Tennessee, next.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota's full line of field-proven hay tools. Explore the full lineup at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
If you're hungry and have a sense of adventure, wild game might be a tasty treat for supper. Some students at University of Tennessee's Institute of Agriculture hold a wild game dinner every year to raise money for their organization. UT's Charles Denny takes us to Beast Feast, where the main entrees are a bit out of the ordinary.
They're firing up the grills on the UT Ag campus, but not a hot dog in sight. You'll find burgers, but venison, not beef. Suffice it to say, this cookout was no vegetarian delight.
What do you got there? They're goose poppers. It's goose wrapped in bacon.
Welcome to Beast Feast, the unofficial name for the annual wild game dinner prepared by wildlife and fishery students at UT's Institute of Agriculture. On the menu,
13 deer, 15 raccoons, 13 beavers, 6 pigs, I think somewhere around 25 squirrels, just a couple of possums, so if you get a possum, you're lucky this year.
students like Joshua Alston hunted, trapped, and cooked supper, a meal Davy Crockett might have enjoyed in centuries past.
2017 marks the 48th year for Beast Feast. The money raised here goes to UT's Wildlife and Fisheries Society. That's a student organization that goes on to compete in sort of the SEC championship of wildlife programs.
This past year, UT took 3rd place overall, and the year before we actually took 1st overall throughout the entire Southeastern Conclave.
Once the meats were cooked, the doors opened and hundreds of people lined up. For a $10 donation, folks can sample lots of different dishes.
Yeah, the students work really hard to put all of this together, and some of them even pull all-nighters and show up really early in the morning or show up at midnight to make all of this happen and bring it together. And it is really impressive because they're using local meats and sustainably harvested and hunted meats to feed the community.
After about an hour, pretty much every bite of wild game had been consumed by hungry humans. Students say they're already planning and hunting for next year's dinner. So bring your appetite for an evening of hearty eating that supports student activities and serves as a throwback to earlier times when meat and protein lived wild in the woods. This is Charles Denny reporting.
All right, thanks, Charles. Now, the Beast Feast also included a silent auction and prize drawing for items like hunting and fishing equipment, all to help the student organization. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you started your week with us. For Mike Hoffman, Betsy Gibbon, and all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
AgDay is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups.